Still sane, Doctor? A Walk in the Dust introduced Passenger, and the story of Walk in the Dust focused on Passenger and Calcit. With this event, of course, Passenger, Tophidens, and Heavy Rain were introduced. So I wanted to, as usual for each of these events, to throw out my thoughts and opinions on it. So, going into the actual stages for the tutorial, each stage, or at least a majority of the stages, have what's called a mobile tactical hangar. And what that does is that there are some enemies called the tactical crossbowmen and a few other enemies that will call drones to help them out. And these drones have a few different effects. So for an example, the first drone, called the Scrap, it fires grenades that do an AoE and decreases the defense of all the operators in the blast radius. So going over this, the tutorial, just a little bit to show an example. So Melantha is going to go after this one enemy here. So Melantha, as you can see here, has 138 defense, and this enemy has kind of that Wi-Fi marker on top of them. So once they get into range, they will call a drone to help them out. And they will spawn from this tactical hangar right here that is placed on some of the stages. And once the drone goes to its area where it's called, it will stop there. So just to show the defense decrease effect, as you can see here, it just about halved Melantha's defense. So that is the main unique gimmick of A Walk in the Dust, is dealing with these various types of drones. So later on in the stages, if I can find them, you'll fight defenders that have very high defense, a okay amount of res, and as soon as they get to half HP, they will summon what is called an anvil drone. This drone, instead of attacking your units, will provide healing within a wide area of effect. A passing mention should be put out to the anti-armor infantry. These guys are essentially foot units of the bomb tails in the main story. So instead of drones, we have a few foot soldiers that will fire one AoE blast and will increase their movement speed. So let me see here. And then we have the War Phantom. So the War Phantom, essentially, as soon as he attacks his first enemy, he sends out the attack drone, and as soon as he goes down to 50% HP, then he will summon the anvil drone. So he's kind of a mix of both the crossbowman and the tactical defender, with the added bonus of greatly increasing all of the drones on the field. So overall, though, the main highlight of this event, in my opinion, and I think a lot of players' opinions, is going to be WD-8 or the EX version, because it introduced the long-awaited Emperor's Blade boss. In Chapter 8, you actually get to face 2 of these, technically, but they don't actually attack you, and they exit the stage pretty much immediately. So, none of us before this event have been actually able to face any of these Emperor's Blades. So this one is called the Emperor's Blade Pursuer, and he has various different effects. He can do AoE, he does a large amount of physical damage, and his first form is not very hard to defeat, but his second form he deals crazy high damage in melee, and then depending on what form he's in and also his HP, he will summon what's called dominions, which have a wide AoE and slows the attack speed of your operators in it, as well as one-shotting them if he does his AoE attack and they're within his dominion. So throughout this event, this boss really overshined the whole drone mechanic overall. And with how they introduced this boss and how it turned out, I actually really loved this boss fight. Because after dealing with the previous event, the Originum Dust boss fight was really hectic, and I kind of felt like as much planning as you can do, it just feels like because of how many slugs it was spamming. The Essence of Evolution was a really annoying boss for a few of the wrong reasons, but the Emperor's Blade, I feel like you have a lot more control over where he puts his dominions, as well as essentially just how to deal with him. But at the same time, though, it kind of feels like you can sort of cheese this boss fight by using a stall strategy. So there is that. Going over to the EX stages, of course, naturally, they have the harder versions of each of the enemies, as well as an improved drone that I'm guessing just provides a greater effect to what they usually do. For an example, the scrap drone might deal slightly more damage, maybe decrease the defense a bit more, and then the anvil drone probably heals more. Because it doesn't seem like their HP and defense numbers really change much. A passing mention should be made that they have no defense, so essentially any sniper that you have built can work really well against them. And it does seem like they have camouflage, or at least it says they're difficult to attack, so pretty much you have to have an operator that deals AoE, or is a sniper that prioritizes drones, or a Reen, the guard who prioritizes drones to deal with them. So later on, when you get to the legendary War Phantoms, some of these the issues that I had with these stages, well, the difficulties, I should say, that I had with these stages is pretty much just having my operators clumped up and having 2 or 3 of those crossbowmen do the AoE drones. That would cause pretty much the main bulk of the issues on these stages. But overall, since the drones, if I didn't mention before, they have a limited duration on the field, they are really easy to bait with gravel, or even Yato would work, just to get rid of the drones, as long as you're paying attention to where the crossbowmen are coming out and where the War Phantoms are coming out. and with heavily built snipers, they aren't really super hard to take out. So I do want to put out a clip here of just a little bit of the hecticness. Now you have to remember that because I've been playing this game for over a year, I do have a well-built squad, so of course if you don't have a lot of Elite 2s or a wide variety of Elite 2s, it might look a bit too easy, but here's the clip. So yeah, overall I think the drone mechanic was fairly interesting, especially with how hectic they can be, but in all honesty I kind of felt like they could have done more with this, especially with the anti-armor infantries. They weren't in a super high amount of stages. I don't remember them appearing too frequently, and it wasn't super hard to bait them. So I think that if they could have done more with the anti-armor infantries, or maybe even added one more different type of drone, like a caster that has a drone that, I don't know, decreases res and maybe the caster does AoE damage or something along those lines, or something that could have made the drone mechanic a little bit more interesting. I thought that more could have been done with it, and I didn't really have a huge amount of difficulty with the EX stages besides the Emperor's Blade boss fight. So I definitely think that they could have done more with it. It was a fairly interesting mechanic, but it wasn't... I don't really feel like it was as unique as it could have been. So definitely the highlight of this event was the Emperor's Blade, and both stages I felt like were very difficult. It took me around, I think, at least 30 minutes, if not more, to figure out a way to deal with the normal version of the EX8 because of the Elite Imperial Strikers that come in the last wave. So it's just kind of bizarre to me that the gimmick of this event doesn't appear in the boss stage, and the boss pretty much overshadows the whole rest of this event, in my opinion. So I did do a whole video on my clear of WDEX8 if you want some gameplay of fighting that boss. And I don't have Suitor, so I don't get to cheese. Well, Suitor doesn't exactly cheese this boss as easily as she does every other boss, but that is worth mentioning. As for the story side, I do want to mention a little bit of this. So my opinion of the story of this event, I was kind of hoping that we would get more on Calcent before the Doctor had amnesia. And I guess technically there was a majority of the story was before that, but it focused on Passenger and Calcent's interactions instead, and Passenger's backstory, which is fine, as well as a few side things in Calcit's past that had to deal with one of her friends and whatnot, and then the Emperor's Blade confrontation. So, in my opinion, what really made me interested in, well, at least very much like the story in Chapter 8, is that I really loved the interactions between Calcit and the Doctor, and I was kind of hoping a little bit more backstory on that, but I have to admit, they did a good job on Passenger's backstory as well. It's just kind of a shame that a lot of players didn't like Passenger when he first came out. The buffs, I think, did help him become a quite formidable operator. So with that, thank you very much for watching, and have a wonderful day.